Soon after I started writing on my portal Total Hvar, I heard about this guy who spent a lot of time on the south of the island in Zavala, who apparently had brought Jodie Foster to Hvar back in the 1979, I think, when she was 15 years old. It sounded like a bit of a crazy story, but I heard this a couple of times, and one of the things I really liked about Hvar was how egalitarian it was. And so you could be somebody very famous and you'd sit at the cafe and you'd speak to a local. It was great. But one day I was having a beer at the office in Jelsa at Cafe Splendid with my friend Mario Romanic, a famous photographer, and there was a guy smiling at him from the cafe across, and Mario asked me if I knew who this guy was, and I didn't. And his name was Jadran Lazic. He was a guy from Split, photographer apparently, and quite a famous one, who lived in Los Angeles most of the time. And so he came to join us, and he told us not only did he bring Jodie Foster to Hvar indeed, but also he told me the most incredible story about how he was the only Western accredited journalist to get to the funeral of the Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev in 1982, and he managed to get in and take photographs of him lying in state. And the story itself is absolutely phenomenal because Jadran was working for a French photo agency called SIPA, and he was living in Belgrade. A few months before the death, he wanted to go to the October Revolution, and he wasn't sure whether to apply for accreditation as a French photojournalist or as a Yugoslav, because socialist Yugoslavia could get access to Moscow a lot easier than Westerners could at the height of the Cold War. And he applied to go to the October Revolution as a French photographer, and he was rejected. A few months later, he was driving his daughter to kindergarten, and on the radio it came the announcement that Brezhnev had died. And he knew that he had to be there. And he knew also that almost no Westerner would be allowed into the Soviet Union at all. And if he could get in, he could get a world exclusive, presumably quite a lot of money as well. And so he called the editor of the biggest newspaper in Belgrade, and he said that he would pay for a journalist to go with him if the editor would give him accreditation for the newspaper as a photographer. Newspaper agreed, and so it was. And so they then got the papers to go to Moscow. They took off in the plane, and it was circling quite a lot. They were drinking a lot of brandy, and eventually landed in Kiev, in the capital of Ukraine. Everything was in disarray because of the death, and they managed then to get them on the plane to Moscow. But Jadran had an American visa in his passport, and this was deemed suspicious. And they managed to get a lift with a Japanese diplomat in a Lada, and this Bosnian lady put them up for the night. How he was going to get into to see Brezhnev itself was tricky, but because of this Bosnian lady, she had connections. He met the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he met probably one of only 4 friendly Soviet officials in the history of the Soviet Union who decided to help him. He was given access to the body of Brezhnev lying in state. He was given 1 minute to take photographs. He took the photographs, he was there trying for about 2 minutes, and then they threw him out. And then the next day he came in and he was able to take photographs for about a minute of various different state leaders paying their respects. And as the funeral cortege went on Red Square, he managed to get some photographs of that as well. And he was the only Western accredited journalist there, but he knew then he had some really, really valuable stuff, and he had to get it out of the Soviet Union, which wasn't as easy as it seemed. He wrapped all his film in aluminium foil to protect against the X-rays, and everything was fine. His friend went through customs, all his luggage went through, everything was good. And as he went through the security, the alarm went off, and it turned out that he had a nail clipper somewhere lost inside his jacket. So they got very suspicious. He could see the plane. He was about 10 meters away from going to the plane. The Soviet official went to look for his boss to see what to do, and Jadran just decided to go for it. So he ran, got onto the plane, gave all his film to his friend and said, if they come and arrest me, please get this to Paris, to the SIPA offices. And he was waiting for the arrest. The arrest didn't come. The doors closed, the plane took off, and he was free. And then he was thinking, well, now I'm in Belgrade. Normally what they would do would be go to the airport, they'd find a passenger going, and they would say, can you please take this to Paris? And then somebody would meet on the other side. But he realized with this, he had some very, very valuable stuff, so he decided to fly to Paris. Just how valuable it was, he found out when he got to Paris airport, because the head of sales for the agency had turned up in the boss's Mercedes and met Jadran, and he wanted to confirm that actually he did have the photographs. The guy said, Jadran, this is great work. The boss would like to give you his Mercedes. And Jadran he's a very smart guy. He said, well, that's very generous, but if I get a Mercedes from you and I take it into Yugoslavia, I will have to pay 100% tax. The phone call was made, and the guy said, okay, the boss will pay the 100% tax as well. At which point, he realized that He had something very valuable, and he said, no deal, I will go 50-50 on the profits of these photographs. And that deal was made. The photographs were on Time magazine cover. They were everywhere because they were the only photographs that got out into the Western world. And in 1982, they sold for a total of $300,000. And for a boy from Splits in 1982, getting $150,000 is no mean feat. And with that, he managed to buy some nice property on the island of Hvar, which is his second love. Every year, I spend a day in July with Jadran because he planted a lavender field on the top of Hvar. Every year, he brings different celebrities from around the world, and they're all there picking lavender, having this wonderful experience. So there we go. This is just one little character that just goes around the island of Hvar and Croatia. It's just full of really, really interesting people.